Coming up next, in-depth news analysis. You're listening to Korea24 from KBS World Radio.
North Korea's ambassador to the United Nations now says that talks about denuclearization are off the table. If they resume nuclear testing, long-range missile testing, what will the U.S. do?
I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. I will tell you this much. My job is to ensure that we are ready, prepared to fight and win tonight if necessary. I believe we're in a high state of readiness right now. But my second task is to enable our diplomats. And so those are the things we do. I work closely with Secretary Pompeo on these issues, and we'll see. I think the talks are always open. I've said, Secretary Pompeo has said, and certainly President Trump has said, we want to sit down, we want to have negotiations, we want to reach the point where we have denuclearized North Korea.
That was U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper appearing on Fox News Sunday, addressing the recent escalation of tensions with North Korea, as you just heard. These comments came after a key North Korean ambassador told media outlets earlier that denuclearization was off the negotiating table with the U.S. Then later on Sunday, Pyongyang carried out what it described as a crucial test at its key space launch facility, raising speculation that it may have tested a rocket missile engine, a crucial component to long-range ballistic missiles. After this announcement, President Trump tweeted that Kim Jong-un has too much to lose if he acts in a hostile way. To get some expert analysis on the rising tensions between Washington and Pyongyang, we're joined today by Dr. Bruce Bennett, a senior defense analyst at the RAND Corporation. Dr. Bennett, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
We normally have you on the phone, but because you're based in LA, but it's great to have you with us today because during this trip to Seoul, I'm sure you're very busy.
It is a busy time. Lots of people to talk with and try to shape opinions on things.
Sure. Let's get some of your thoughts on all the issues surrounding North Korea today. Now, we ran through those series of events, but let's start with that quote-unquote crucial test that the North Korean state media announced on Sunday. It was at the Seohae satellite launching station in Dongchangli. The report did not specify what was tested, but the site has been previously used to launch rockets into space and also test missile engines. The general consensus at the moment seems to be that it was probably a missile engine test. Do you agree with that assessment?
As far as I can tell, we don't have a lot of information that's been made public about it yet, so it probably was a mission engine test. Clear indication that Kim has backed off from things that he had previously done because that test stand was supposed to be disassembled. And it makes the point of what the U.S. had originally wanted. We wanted complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. He's demonstrated that the actions he's taken so far are reversible.
Right. During the third inter-Korean summit, I believe, between President Moon and Kim Jong-un, that Kim signed a declaration saying that the North will permanently dismantle Seohae and under the observation of foreign experts as well. I think that's what they said. Now, the US also said they had confirmed that Pyongyang had agreed to dismantle it, but the fact that North Korea has now carried out a test here suggests a bit of a, should we say, slap in the face.
We need to go way beyond that. Go back to the April Panmunjom Agreement. April Panmunjom Agreement, most people criticize as being soft on denuclearization, but they don't get the cleverness of President Moon. In Article number 1.1 of that agreement, it says, North and South Korea will fully implement all previous agreements. One of the previous agreements was the 1992 Denuclearization Declaration. In that declaration, North Korea promised to produce no nuclear weapons, have no nuclear weapons, have no uranium enrichment, have no plutonium reprocessing. Kim signed that agreement in April of last year, and yet he's violating the agreement by not disassembling those capabilities. So I think we should have lots of reason to doubt that anything he does is irreversible or anything he promises to do we're necessarily going to see happen.
One more point on this actual test itself. How significant should we view a missile engine test? In the past few months, the North has carried out several short-range missile launches as well as a submarine-launched ballistic missile. And so far, President Trump has shrugged them off. He's previously suggested that only a nuclear test or a long-range missile would cross the red line. So a missile engine test, I guess, doesn't cross that line yet.
It doesn't cross that line, but look at the tests that were done over this summer. Many of them were with Iskander-like missiles. They're terrain-following missiles. They're very difficult to intercept with traditional missile defenses. If they can't be readily intercepted, that really changes North Korea's ability to deliver nuclear weapons. So we don't know yet what kind of missile this engine was designed to support, if that's what was really tested. But North Korea's been probably building engines for larger missiles. It could be in support of an ICBM. That would certainly be the significance that the North Korean observers have quoted.
Shortly before the North announced its latest test from Dongchangli, President Trump spoke to reporters about North Korea, at that time seemingly unaware of this imminent launch. And this is what he said. We have a short clip.
How do you plan on re-engaging North Korea in negotiations? Well, we'll see about North Korea. I'd be surprised if North Korea acted hostilely. I have a very good relationship with Kim Jong-un. I think we both want to keep it that way. He knows I have an election coming up. I don't think he wants to interfere with that, but we'll have to see. He's somebody that I've gotten along with very well for 3 years, and he's gotten along with me very well. So we'll see how it goes, but I really don't think he wants to interfere with the election. I think he'd like to see something happen. The relationship is very good, but, you know, there is...
Now, it's interesting in that clip, President Trump mentions next year's presidential elections twice. He also mentioned it in a tweet that I mentioned earlier, saying that he's sure Kim does not want to interfere in the elections. So he seems to be drawing a clear link with the North Korea nuclear talks and his re-election campaign. But Pyongyang does not seem to be listening at the moment, and they in fact seem to be further antagonizing, using it against him. How do you see that situation?
Kim Jong-un doesn't understand the United States and the U.S. system. If he did, he would have never gone to Hanoi and made such extravagant demands of President Trump. President Trump took considerable criticism after the Singapore agreement because it wasn't really very well balanced, and Hanoi would have been far more seriously unbalanced from what Kim Jong-un was asking. So Kim Jong-un didn't understand that the president couldn't just make that agreement and walk away without any problems. In the American political system, that matters. Kim probably also doesn't understand a presidential election. He's never had to worry about one of those. So the president, I think, is very hopeful. The president has tried to create a new relationship with Kim, given him every benefit of the doubt. And so far, Kim has betrayed the president. You know, he's probably, roughly my calculation is, since March last year when he volunteered to dismantle his nuclear program, he has increased his nuclear destructive potential, a combination of numbers of weapons and size, by over 100%. That's betrayal when he promised dismantlement. And it suggests that dismantlement is not something he's seriously offering.
Right. Before we move on to the dismantling issue, by mentioning the elections, though, President Trump, does he essentially give ammunition to Pyongyang about the way they can negotiate and the tactics they can use? They know he's sensitive about anything that can make him look bad in a re-election year. So Pyongyang could be trying to push him to make a deal and knowing there's a timeline.
Remember that President Trump in 2017 talked about a maximum pressure campaign against North Korea. Kim Jong-un is running a maximum pressure campaign against President Trump, only it's escalating. He's started with short-range missiles, but it's pretty clear he's going to go to much more serious kinds of threats. And threatening the president relative to the election would be consistent with that. We just don't know whether he understands, though, the importance of the election. But they do know that the United States is always going to have problems with the missile launches and the nuclear tests.
North Korea's ambassador to the UN, Kim Sung, he made an interesting statement. He released a statement to the press that said denuclearization is off the negotiating table with the United States. He said that the sustained and substantial dialogue sought by Washington was a time-saving trick to suit its domestic political agenda, in an apparent reference to Trump's 2020 re-election bid. So how seriously should we take his comments? Have denuclearization talks already failed for now, or is it at least going that way?
You know, you look at the talks in Sweden, for example. As far as I can tell, the U.S. put everything on the table the U.S. could put, offering generously to North Korea. And North Korea comes back and says the U.S. offered nothing. So has the North been seriously negotiating? I mean, you know, this year, what serious negotiation has the North offered? Have they volunteered to give up one nuclear weapon? Have they volunteered to eliminate one production facility or even shut one down? They have offered nothing substantive towards denuclearization. The previous confidence-building measures they offered, like the Sohae facility, they've reneged on. So if you created a balance sheet between what the North has done and what the U.S. has done, the North doesn't look very good. And hopefully the U.S. government will do that so that everybody in the world will recognize that the North has not been seriously negotiating.
Let's talk about this end-of-year deadline that the North Koreans have imposed seemingly on themselves. It all seems to be coming ahead now. Tensions are escalating. The war of words have escalated. As you said, North Korea's provocations are escalating. Where do you see this going between now and the end of the year? Do you think Kim Jong-un could potentially cross that red line we talked about and carry out a more significant test, such as an ICBM launch or a nuclear test? And if not, what does Pyongyang do till then?
Well, so Kim Jong-un has been very careful this year with the missiles he's tested. He's gradually escalated, but very gradually trying not to cross. And we don't know what the president's red line is going to be in the end. So he's tried to avoid crossing what could become a red line. I don't think by December he's going to do an ICBM launch. I think that's a little too extreme. But could he do an intermediate range missile test? Sure. Could he do some other kind of test? He could. I think, though, that we're going to see the ICBM test next year. I think we will see an SLBM test next year over Japan. That's an escalation, which I think he will do to try to say, look, I can make things really bad for you, Mr. President, if you don't give me everything I want. And then the president has to decide, how does the U.S. from our side both escalate against Kim Jong-un, but also try to mediate with the North Korean people? We're not the enemy of the North Korean people. So we need to convince the North Korean, especially senior leadership, we're not their enemy. We're prepared to work with them, but Kim Jong-un has this extreme view of the world that makes it very difficult for us to work with him.
You're saying he has an extreme view that makes it difficult to work. They must know, though, that the route they're going down, these escalating tensions, is probably not going to, the US aren't going to cave that easily.
And I don't have much in the way of sources on this, but I have a couple of sources from North Korea that say Kim seems convinced that he only has to push Trump a little harder and he will succeed. But then he thought when he went to Hanoi that he could push Trump real hard and get what he wanted, and he made a mistake. Now the advisors who told him that are been purged. Don't know why it is that he's thinking he only needs to push a little harder. But that appears to be where he is.
Do you think there's anything South Korea can do at this point between now and the end of the year to affect the situation? President Moon and Trump spoke on the phone on Saturday as well. They reportedly agreed that the situation has become severe and that dialogue momentum should be maintained to achieve prompt results from denuclearization negotiations. Is there a role for South Korea to play at this moment?
Absolutely. And let me take one step back and say The key here is Kim Jong-un thinks his nuclear weapons are his ultimate guarantee of regime survival. But in American doctrine, if he ever uses one, the regime will be destroyed. So we, the U.S. and South Korea, need to be convincing Kim that his perspective is wrong, that indeed he cannot achieve what he would like to with nuclear weapons, and that if he ever uses them, it's the end of the regime. To do that, what we have to do is put together a program that does things like increasing defenses against nuclear weapons. Now, people will say, well, you can't do that. But during the Cold War, we did a lot of that in Europe, a lot of preparation of an ability to disperse and operate from other areas, to evacuate cities if need be. If we increase our defenses, he doesn't get the bang out of his nuclear weapons that he's looking for. And the key there is South Korean behavior.
We're going to try and squeeze in one more question.
Sure.
If you had to advise the Trump administration now on how to deal with North Korea in the short term go ahead, what would your advice be?
I think we need to do a couple of things. Number one, we need to make the sanctions more serious. You do that by stopping the ship-to-ship transfers. The U.S. should do that with China, but we should tell China that if they won't, we will, and they won't like the naval presence of the U.S. up in the East Sea, or in the West Sea. But in addition, we need to try and re-educate Kim Jong-un. We've got to try and reach out to his elites, to his family members if necessary, to help him understand that nuclear weapons are not his guarantee of survival.
We'll have to leave that discussion there for today. We've been speaking to Dr. Bruce Bennett from the RAND Corporation. Thank you for your time and your insights today.
Thank you.